I was a hustler. Like, it's so ironic. Like, I hustled so hard to be the top earner in the club and didn't keep a dime. I would go to church on a Wednesday night and go to the strip club afterwards for my shift because that was my job. I didn't know a lot about Christians, but I was pretty sure they didn't like strippers. I grew up in a very violent home in a violent neighborhood. My mother was a cocaine addict. My stepdad who raised me was a drug dealer, and they had a very violent relationship. I was also sexually abused throughout my life by multiple people, both men and women, starting at the age of 5, and raped as a teen. I started writing suicide notes and contemplating how I would kill myself, and attempted suicide for the first time. One of my abusers was my mother's boyfriend, and that was when I was 13. And she knew what was going on, and she didn't stop him. And it's not because she's horrible or bad. She taught me what she learned when she was a young girl being abused, and that it's my fault. If you don't wear tank tops and if you don't wear shorts, this wouldn't be happening. You should know how men are. That's literally what she would say to me. She left with him to actually go to Canada for 3 months. She left us with $20 and a book of food stamps. I started stealing from the liquor store to feed my brother and I. It was that year, that summer, that I became involved with an older boy in my neighborhood. When he was around, I didn't have to steal for food because he would buy us food. And I looked at him and saw this knight in shining armor and had no idea that his intention was to exploit me. I did not have the dream to grow up to be a stripper. When my boyfriend and I started talking about it, I didn't want to do it. I absolutely did not want to do it. And I had a psychology professor that I really trusted and respected. I went to him and I was like, hey, I'm having financial troubles, and basically everyone's saying I should strip, and I don't want it to ruin any chance that I have of being a psychologist one day, and I don't want this to get in the way with my career path. What do you think? He was like, well, it's not like you have to put it on your resume. I don't really see a problem with it. And he kind of took away all the excuses that I had for not doing it. As I was getting ready to walk out, he's like, what club are you thinking of working at? And I don't know why I told him. And sure enough, he came in, went to my boss, and she also was like, oh, if I looked like you, I'd do that too. It's not that big a deal. Use your body, use what God gave you, make some money. That's one of the things that pimps will tell girls when they're trying to convince them to sell themselves. I didn't see him as a pimp at the time, I just saw him as my boyfriend. That relationship was what led me into the sex industry at the age of 19. Every night I came home, gave him all my money. I didn't think I deserved it anyways, even though I worked for it, I walked in that night and I went to the DJ, because that's one of the first things you do, and give him your music or whatever. And he's like, so what's your name? And I was like, Harmony. He turned around and he wrote my name, and just seeing it in black and white like that, it just freaked me out. And I was like, no, take it down. I'm Monique. And so he turned around and wrote Monique. And from that point on, I became Monique. Monique was whoever the customers wanted Monique to be. Harmony wouldn't do the things that Monique would do. Everything I said to the customers was a lie. I didn't tell the truth about where I went to school. I didn't even tell them my dog's real name. I even had a fake real name. So I had my real name and my fake name and a fake real name and a fake school I went to and a fake neighborhood I lived in and a fake life. If you don't act all gaga over somebody and they get offended, then they feel like they have the right to give you a piece of their mind. You're a bitch, you're a whore, I would just kick their drink on their lap. In my daily life, I would wear sweatpants, baggy clothes, glasses. I didn't want to be seen, I didn't want to be recognized. I didn't want to be looked at. You're looking at me and you're not even paying me? If a man touched me, I did get violent. If a guy said to me, what would you do if I fill in the blank, XYZ? I would say, I will take my stiletto off and I'll beat you over the head. And then he would do it. So I'm like, I gave him fair warning that I have a boundary here, and this is what I'm gonna do if you cross the boundary. There were a couple of times where the police were called by a customer that I beat up. I would tell the cops, he touched me. And the cops would look at me like I'm crazy. There was a woman in the club who was a former ballerina, and she knew I loved dance. So I signed up for a ballet class. That's where I met a girl who, her friendship just changed my life. Had respect for herself and had boundaries and lived with a sense of purpose and just was free, like so free. She just treated me like a person and just loved me. And I never felt like a project. You know, I found out she was Christian and I was like, oh my gosh, I've ruined this friendship. Like, I didn't know a lot about Christians, but I was pretty sure they didn't like strippers. When I first started going to church, people at church would say, what's your name? I would be like, Harmony. Like, I would almost feel startled to hear my name. My only contact was with my abusive pimp boyfriend, the customers in the club, and the other girls dancing there. Nobody called me Harmony. Everybody called me Monique. All I knew is I wanted to be in church every time the doors were open, but I had this other life. And so I would go to church on a Wednesday night and go to the strip club afterwards for my shift because that was my job. So I remember one night being in the strip club, I started getting really emotional and started crying, which was very unusual for me. I was so disconnected from every emotion except for anger. I wouldn't cry, but here I found myself crying. I looked around and I was like, if I was created with a purpose, this can't be it. This right here cannot be what I was put on this planet to do. I got on stage for my first set and all of a sudden I looked around and I felt naked for the first time. I'd been naked there for years, and all of a sudden I felt naked. I felt exposed and vulnerable. They're looking at me, but they don't see me. And I'm here naked, and they don't see me. After the set was finished, I went back to the dressing room. Okay, shake it off, you have to make money. You can't quit, go back out and hustle. And so I go out onto the floor. I was like, God, I can't quit. I don't want to be here, but I can't quit. I never saw anybody quit. One girl in the whole time I was at the club quit because she married a rich customer. Other than that, you don't get out. You don't leave. And I just felt God say, I haven't let you down and I'm not gonna let you down. I just knew it's time to go. So I walked up to my manager and I was like, I'm gonna go. And he's like, what do you mean, for the night? And I'm like, no, I'm quitting. I threw all my clothes out of my locker and I said my clothes are for sale. Everything. I didn't want anything that would give me an easy way to go back. And walked out of that club and I never went back. When I drove off that night, I felt so free. I'm free. I felt so free. I was still in the abusive relationship though. Leaving that relationship actually was the harder thing to do for me. That's the reason I was there in the first place. I actually called him and told him, I was like, I quit. I mean, he must have been in complete shock. I had known him since I was 11. Since I was 13, he had complete control of my life. He said, I don't understand. He was so shocked and I said, you don't have to understand, you just have to accept it. Bye, and hung up. I wrote my story in a memoir called Scars and Stilettos and just want to uncover some of the realities of the sex industry. Research says 89% of women in the sex industry want to leave, but don't see any other options. If the sex industry were so empowering to women, we wouldn't see that. We would see empowered women, and that's not what we see. Treasures is an outreach and support group to women in the sex industry and victims of sex trafficking. And our mission is to help them live healthy and flourishing lives. We provide care and outreach to 170 strip clubs a year in LA and Las Vegas here through Treasures. And we offer mentoring and therapist support groups. We don't try to fix them, we don't try to change them, we just love them where they're at and we walk alongside them and walk through their journey. I believe that just as much as there's hope for any woman who's ever been in the industry, there's hope for the men who have participated in the demand. I understand where the drive to view porn or buy sex or go to a strip club, I see where that drive comes from. And often it comes from a kind of broken place, so I have compassion for that. Sexual addiction is shame-driven. So the more shame a person feels, the more likely they are to act out. And so shame's not gonna get anybody free. What I've done is not who I am. And just because I did that before doesn't mean I have to do it again, and doesn't mean I have to be that person that did that before. We need the people participating in the demand to get free. Because if they get free, the women get free. Because without the demand, there would be no supply. For every man or woman who gets free, there are other people on the other end of that are gonna get free as well. We can't change what happened yesterday, but we can decide where we're gonna go from here. Hey, this is Harmony Dust Grillo, and you are watching This Is Me TV.